The chamber was vast, built to impress and intimidate. Ambassador Ji-hoon Park had walked these halls for 15 years, and the grandeur had long since lost its effect on him. The ceiling stretched hundreds of meters above, covered in holographic displays of 1,000 worlds. Each one represented a species that sat on the Galactic Council. Each one had a voice. Each one had power, except humanity. Ji-hoon stood at the human podium, a simple platform that sat lower than the others. It was positioned in the back corner where the light was dimmer, where voices carried less weight. He had complained about it once, 8 years ago. The council had smiled and promised to review the seating arrangement. They never did. Today was supposed to be different. Today was the vote. 80 years had passed since humanity had joined the Galactic Council. 80 years of service. 80 years of sharing technology, providing medical aid, and solving problems that other species could not. Humanity had helped defend Council space from pirates. Human engineers had designed the trade route network that connected 40 systems. Human doctors had cured 3 different plagues. All of this, and humanity still held the status of probationary member. No voting rights. No say in council decisions. Just obligations and expectations. Ji-hoon looked across the chamber at the faces of the council members. Some were reptilian, covered in scales that shifted color with their moods. Others were gaseous, contained in sophisticated environmental suits. A few looked almost human, but their eyes were wrong, too large or too many. He had learned to read them all over the years. Right now he saw impatience. The vote was called. The question was simple: should humanity be granted full member status? One by one, the council members registered their votes. The display showed the results in real time. Ji-hoon watched the numbers change. 2 votes in favor. 43 against. His hands remained steady at his sides, but something cold settled in his chest. Before he could speak, Councillor Velrus rose from their seat. Velrus was an old member of the council, one of the founding species. Their species had been traveling the stars when humanity was still figuring out agriculture. Velrus spoke with the authority of age and power. "The council has made its decision," Velrus announced. "Humanity will remain in probationary status. However, we have urgent business to discuss. The Void Swarm approaches our outer territories. Long-range sensors confirm they will reach the Deneb sector within 6 months." Ji-hoon knew about the Void Swarm, everyone did. They were something from beyond the galactic rim, a force that consumed everything in its path. Planets, stations, entire civilizations disappeared into the darkness they brought. The Council had been monitoring their approach for 2 years. "Humanity has developed new defensive technology," Velrus continued. "Quantum shielding, we believe it is called. The Council requires immediate access to this technology. You will provide complete technical specifications and manufacturing procedures within 30 days. Not a request. A demand." Ji-hoon stood silent for a moment. Behind him, Captain So-min Lee watched from the observation gallery. She commanded humanity's defense fleet, and she had helped develop the quantum shielding. Next to her sat Dr. Hyun-woo Kim, the scientist who had made the breakthrough that led to the technology. They both waited for Ji-hoon's response. "The Council has rejected our petition for full membership," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Yet you immediately demand our latest militechnology." "Your petition was evaluated fairly," another counselor replied. "The decision stands. As for the technology, this is a matter of council security. All probationary members are required to contribute to the common defense. We have contributed for 80 years. "And the council is grateful," Velrus said, their tone making it clear the gratitude was superficial. "Your species has been useful. Continue to be useful, and perhaps in another century we will revisit the question of full membership." "Useful?" The word hung in the air like poison. "Your kind exists to serve the greater species," another counselor added. "Accept your place. It is better than what you had before we found you, struggling on your single world." Ji-hoon looked at the speaker. He remembered when that particular species had needed help with a genetic plague. Human doctors had worked for 3 years to develop a cure. They had saved billions. The gratitude had lasted exactly as long as the crisis. He turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. No bow, no acknowledgement of dismissal. He simply left. Somin and Hyunwoo caught up with him in the corridor outside. They walked in silence until they reached the secure human section of the station. Inside a shielded room where no one could listen, the three of them sat down. "Well?" Somin asked. 43-2, Jehun said. They voted no, then immediately demanded the quantum shielding. Hyunwoo shook his head. Of course they did. They always do. I have a proposal, Jehun said. He pulled out a data tablet and placed it on the table. I have been thinking about this for a long time. I believe it is time we consider a complete withdrawal from Council space. Somin leaned forward. Explain. We leave. All of us. Every human in Council territory. Every station we built. Every facility we maintain. We take it all apart and go home. We close our borders and let the Council handle its own problems. They will threaten us, Hyunwoo said. Possibly attack. With what? Somin replied. Half their defense grid runs on technology we designed. Their medical systems use our equipment. Even their food production relies on agricultural methods we taught them. They talk about how primitive we are, but they need us for everything that matters. Exactly, Jehun said. We have been propping them up for decades. They have forgotten how to do these things themselves. What happens when we stop? They collapse, Somin said simply. Or at least they suffer. Is that our goal? Hyunwoo asked. To make them suffer? No, Jehun replied. Our goal is to be free, to stop being used. If they suffer as a consequence of their own choices, that is not our responsibility. We warn them. We asked for partnership. They chose to treat us as servants instead. The three of them sat in silence for a moment. Then Somin spoke. I can have the fleet ready to begin evacuation in 2 weeks. We will need 3 months to extract everyone and dismantle the critical systems. Do it quietly, Jehun said. No announcements. No explanations. We simply leave. What about the Council? Hyunwoo asked. What do we tell them? Jehun stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, beyond Council space, humanity had been quietly building. New colonies. New stations. A whole sector that the Council knew nothing about. They had prepared for this day without even realizing it. We tell them nothing, Jehun said. Silence is the only answer they deserve. The message went out through encrypted channels that only humans could access. It was short and simple. Prepare for immediate withdrawal. No reasons were given. None were needed. Every human in Council space had experienced the same treatment, the same dismissal, the same casual contempt. They understood. Captain Somin Lee stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the coordination unfold across dozens of screens. Hundreds of human facilities across Council space were beginning the extraction process simultaneously. Medical stations, research outposts, defense platforms, trading hubs, agricultural centers. Everything humanity had built over 8 decades was being carefully taken apart. Status report, she said to her second officer. 67 transport ships are en route to designated pickup points. The first wave of civilians will be evacuated from the Antares colonies within 12 hours. Engineering teams have begun dismantling the medical facility on Counselor Station 7. Somin nodded. Counselor Station 7 was one of the largest medical centers in Council space. Humans had built it 30 years ago after a pandemic had killed millions. The Council had been grateful then. They had promised humanity a permanent seat in the Medical Oversight Committee. The promise had been forgotten within a year. Make sure they take everything, Somin said. Every piece of equipment. Every medical scanner. Every medication synthesizer. If we built it, it comes with us. Understood, Captain. On the planet Helios 4, engineer Minho Choi oversaw the dismantling of the central power distribution network. He had designed this system himself 7 years ago. The planet had been suffering from constant blackouts. Their own engineers could not solve the problem. Minho had fixed it in 3 months, creating a network that was stable, efficient, and easy to maintain, except the council engineers had not bothered to learn how to maintain it. They had just assumed humans would always be there to handle it. "Disconnect the primary relay," Minho ordered his team, "and pull the backup generators. Everything goes." "Sir, if we take all of this, their power grid will fail within a week," one of his engineers said. "I know," Minho replied. "Not our problem anymore?" The engineer hesitated, then nodded and got back to work. Around them, alien workers watched with confusion. A few approached Minho with questions. "What are you doing? Why are you taking the generators?" "We are leaving," Minho said simply. "Leaving? For how long?" "Permanently." "But who will maintain the system?" Minho looked at the alien worker for a long moment. "You will. Or you will not. That is for you to decide." He walked away without another word. The conversation was over. Across council space, similar scenes played out. Human traders stopped taking contracts. Human mercenaries resigned from security details. Human teachers left their posts at universities. Human cooks closed their restaurants. Human musicians canceled performances. Every human in every role simply stopped and prepared to leave. At first, the council barely noticed. Humans were quiet by nature, they thought. Humans kept to themselves. It was just routine personnel rotation, nothing unusual, but then the questions started. Why have the medical teams on Station 12 not reported for duty? Where are the human navigators? The trade convoy to Sector 9 needs guides through the unstable space. The agricultural shipment from the human farms is 3 days late. Where is it? The answers were all the same. The humans have left. They are not coming back. Councillor Velrus stood in their office, reading report after report. Human facilities going offline. Human personnel departing. Human services shutting down. At first, they had assumed it was some kind of protest. Humans were upset about the vote, so they were making a scene. They would calm down. They always did, but this felt different. There was no anger. No public statements. No demands. Just silence and departure. Velrus sent a message to Ambassador Jihoon Park. The response came back within an hour. Humanity is withdrawing from all council territories. We will complete our departure within 90 days. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. That was all? No explanation. No negotiation. No emotion. Velrus tried to call Jihoon directly. The communication channel was closed. They tried the human embassy. The building was empty, already being dismantled. They tried the human fleet command. Every message was met with the same automated response. Humanity is no longer participating in council affairs. Other council members began to panic. They sent delegations to human facilities demanding answers. The humans were polite but firm. They were leaving. No, they would not stay. No, they would not negotiate. No, they would not explain beyond what had already been said. "But you cannot just leave," one counselor protested to a human station administrator. "You have responsibilities, contracts, obligations." "Our contracts included a clause allowing termination with 90 days' notice," the administrator replied. "We are following the terms exactly. As for obligations, we have fulfilled them for 80 years. We are done now. The council will not permit this." The administrator smiled, but it did not reach their eyes. "The council does not have the authority to force us to stay. We are leaving council space entirely. What you permit or do not permit is irrelevant." On the human colony of New Sol, families packed their belongings and prepared to board transport ships. The colony had been established 40 years ago on a planet the council had deemed worthless. Humans had turned it into a thriving agricultural center that fed 3 neighboring systems. A delegation of alien farmers arrived, begging them to stay. "If you leave, we will starve. The crops will fail. We do not know how to maintain your systems." The human colony administrator, a woman named Jiwoo, looked at them with something like pity. We offered to teach you. 5 years ago, we proposed a training program. The council said it was unnecessary. They said humans should just continue managing the farms ourselves. That was a mistake, one of the aliens said. We see that now. Please stay and teach us. No, Jiwoo said. We are leaving. You will have to figure it out yourselves or find another solution. We have our own people to take care of now. The transports lifted off, one by one, carrying humans away from worlds they had helped build. Behind them, they left empty buildings and deactivated systems. Some facilities were dismantled completely. Others were left intact, but without the knowledge needed to operate them. 3 months passed. The last human transport ship departed from Council Central Hub, the massive space station that served as the political heart of the Council. Captain Soman Lee watched from her bridge as the station grew smaller in the distance. All personnel accounted for, her officer reported. Every human in Council space is now en route to the new territories. Soman pulled up a diagnostic display of the Council Hub. The lights were dimmer now. Life support was running at reduced capacity. The defensive grid showed multiple gaps. All of these systems had been maintained by human engineers. Some had been designed by humans in the first place. They left it exactly as they found it, Soman murmured. Captain? 80 years ago, when we arrived, this station was struggling. The life support barely worked. The defensive grid had holes. The trade network was a mess. We fixed all of it. We upgraded their systems, trained their people, solved their problems. And now we have put it back the way it was. She closed the display and turned away from the window. Behind them, the Council Hub hung in space, its lights flickering as systems began to fail. Ahead of them, beyond Council space, waited a new home that the Council knew nothing about. Humanity had left without anger or revenge. They had simply stopped helping. And that, Soman thought, would be less than enough. 6 months had passed since the last human had left Council space. Counselor Velrus stood in what used to be the finest medical facility in the sector. Now it was a tomb of broken machines and desperate patients. The plague had started small. A few cases on a mining colony in the outer territories. Normally, human medical teams would have responded within days, containing the outbreak before it spread. But there were no human medical teams anymore. There were no humans at all. The Council's own doctors had tried. They had studied the disease, run tests, developed treatments. Nothing worked. The plague spread from one world to another, carried by trade ships and travelers. Hundreds were sick now. Dozens had died. Velrus walked through the medical ward, past beds filled with children suffering from fever and pain. Their parents sat beside them, helpless and afraid. The medical equipment that might have saved them sat dark and useless. The human technicians who knew how to operate it were gone. We sent another message to humanity, an aide said quietly. Begging for help? For doctors? For medicine? For anything, and? Velrus asked, though they already knew the answer. No response. The communication channels are closed. We cannot even confirm the messages are being received. Velrus nodded slowly. They had sent dozens of messages over the past months. Apologies, explanations, offers of full membership, of equal partnership, of anything humanity might want. Every message had disappeared into silence. The medical crisis was just one problem among many. The trade routes had collapsed within weeks of humanity's departure. Human navigators had charted the safe paths through unstable space, mapped the dangerous sectors, identified the reliable shortcuts. Without them, ships were getting lost. Some disappeared entirely, swallowed by spatial anomalies that humans would have warned them about. Trade convoys that used to take 2 weeks now took 2 months, if they arrived at all. Goods that used to flow freely between worlds now sat in warehouses, waiting for ships that never came. Prices had tripled. Some worlds faced shortages of basic supplies. The food situation was even worse. Human agricultural innovations had increased crop yields across 40 planets. The Council had enjoyed abundant food for decades, taking it for granted that humans would always be there to manage the farms and optimize the harvests. But the humans had taken their knowledge with them. The automated systems they had installed were failing now, without maintenance. The crop rotation schedules they had developed were forgotten. The pest control methods they had pioneered were no longer being applied. Food production had dropped by 30% across council space. Some worlds faced actual hunger for the first time in generations. And then there was the defense grid. Admiral Taejun Kang had commanded humanity's contribution to council defense. He had trained thousands of officers, designed tactical protocols, and established early warning stations throughout the territory. When he left, he had taken every human soldier with him. The council had assumed their own military could fill the gaps. They were wrong. The defensive network had holes now. Entire sectors went unmonitored. Pirates who had been suppressed for years were returning, bolder and more aggressive. They raided outlying colonies, knowing the council's response time had gone from hours to days, but the pirates were not the real threat. The real threat was coming from beyond the galactic rim. The void swarm had reached the outer territories. Long-range sensors, the ones still working, showed the darkness spreading across 3 systems. Planets were going silent. Stations were disappearing. The swarm consumed everything in its path. And it was getting closer. The Council's defense plan had relied heavily on human shield technology and tactical coordination. Without it, they had nothing. The outer defense stations, many of them built and maintained by humans, were failing. Some had been abandoned entirely when their human crews departed. Velrus received the casualty reports daily. Millions were fleeing the outer systems, trying to reach safety in the core territories. Refugee camps were springing up on every available world. Disease was spreading in the crowded conditions. Food was running short. And still the swarm advanced. The council met in emergency session. The grand chamber felt smaller now, darker. Many of the display systems were malfunctioning. The holographic star map flickered and glitched. Human technicians had maintained these systems. Now they were breaking down and no one knew how to fix them. "We must contact humanity," one counselor declared. "We must convince them to return." "We have tried," Velrus replied. "They do not respond." "Then we must send a delegation. Go to human space directly. Negotiate in person. Human space is beyond a barrier we cannot cross. They have established some kind of border defense. Our ships are turned away before they can make contact. Then we force our way through. With what military?" Another counselor snapped. "Half our fleet is trying to evacuate the outer territories. The other half is dealing with pirate raids. We have nothing left to force anything." The meeting dissolved into arguments. Some blamed Velrus for the original decision to deny humanity full membership. Others blamed the entire council for taking humans for granted. A few blamed humanity itself, calling them traitors and cowards for abandoning the council in its time of need, but blame solved nothing. The problems kept growing. On the planet Sanctuary Prime, riots had broken out. The population was angry about food shortages, about the failing medical system, about the government's inability to protect them. Security forces tried to restore order, but they were overwhelmed. The station's defense systems, installed by humans, were offline. The crowd control technology, designed by humans, broken and useless. Similar unrest was spreading across council space. Trust in the government was collapsing. Some worlds were talking about secession, about trying to find humanity themselves and negotiate separate agreements. Velrus sat alone in their office late one night, reviewing old records. They found a file from 12 years ago, a report written by Ambassador Ji-hoon Park. It was a proposal for integrating human and council systems, for creating a true partnership where both sides contributed and both sides benefited. The proposal had been rejected. Velrus remembered the meeting. They had laughed at some of the suggestions. Humans as equals? Humans with voting power? The idea had seemed absurd. Now, reading the document again, Velrus saw the warnings they had missed. Ji-hoon had carefully documented every way the council depended on human expertise. He had outlined the risks of maintaining that dependence without granting humans a real voice in decisions. He had predicted almost exactly what would happen if humanity ever decided to leave, and at the end of the report, Ji-hoon had written a single line that Velrus had dismissed as dramatic rhetoric: "Partnership requires respect. Without respect, you have only servants, and servants can always choose to leave." Velrus closed the file and stared out the window at the darkening stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the barrier, humanity was thriving. Intelligence reports suggested they had colonized an entire new sector. They had resources, technology, and freedom. They did not need the Council, but the Council needed them desperately. Another alert came through. The Void Swarm had consumed another system. 4 billion dead. The defense fleet had tried to stop it and failed. They needed the quantum shielding technology that humans had developed. They needed the tactical coordination that human officers had provided. They needed help. Velrus sent another message to humanity. Not a demand this time. Not an order. A plea. We were wrong. We see that now. Please, people are dying. Children are suffering. We need your help. We will give you anything. Full membership. Voting rights. Equal partnership. Just please help us. The message went out into the darkness. Like all the others, it received no response. Humanity's silence was absolute. And in that silence, the Council was learning a hard lesson. They had taken humans for granted for 80 years, treating them as useful tools rather than valuable partners. Now they were discovering the difference between the two. Tools could be discarded and replaced. Partners could not. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council was dying. Not from any external attack, though the Void Swarm continued its advance. It was dying from within, torn apart by species that no longer trusted each other and could not agree on anything. Councillor Velrus stood before what remained of the Council Assembly. Only 32 members had attended today's session. The others had stopped coming, too busy dealing with crises on their own worlds to participate in the endless, pointless debates. The situation in the outer territories is critical, Velrus reported. The Void Swarm has consumed 7 systems. Refugee counts exceed 2 billion. Our defense fleet engaged the swarm at the Helios barrier and suffered catastrophic losses. 3/4 of our ships were destroyed. The chamber was silent. A year ago, such news would have sparked immediate action. Now, it barely registered. Everyone was too exhausted, too defeated to react. We need the human quantum shielding technology, Velrus continued. Without it, we cannot stop the swarm. I propose we send another diplomatic mission to human space. We have sent 23 missions, another counselor replied wearily. All have been turned away at the barrier. The humans will not even speak to us. Then we must try harder. Offer them more. Guarantee their demands. What demands? A third counselor snapped. They have made no demands. They have said nothing. They simply ignore us, as if we do not exist. Across the council space, 3 major species had already announced their intention to secede. They planned to seek out humanity independently, to negotiate their own agreements outside the council framework. The council had threatened them with sanctions and military action, but everyone knew the threats were empty. The military was broken. The economy was collapsing. The council had no power to enforce anything anymore. On the military front, Warlord Krithos was making his move. He commanded the largest remaining battle fleet, and he had decided the council's civilian leadership was too weak to handle the crisis. His forces had seized control of 12 systems, declaring martial law and establishing military governance. The council has failed, Krithos announced in a broadcast that reached every world. Weak politicians caused this disaster by insulting humanity and driving them away. Now those same politicians sit in their chambers doing nothing while our people die. I will not wait for their permission to act. My fleet will restore order. It was a coup, thinly disguised as emergency action. Some welcomed it, believing strong military leadership was needed. Others resisted, seeing it as tyranny. Fighting broke out in several systems as council loyalists clashed with Krathos's forces. The council itself split into factions. One group wanted to find humanity at any cost and beg for their return. Another faction wanted to declare humanity as enemies, blaming them for abandoning the Council in its time of need. A third faction wanted to dissolve the Council entirely and let each species fend for itself. Humanity betrayed us, one counselor shouted during a particularly bitter debate. They were obligated to help. They fled like cowards when we needed them most. We should prepare for war against them. War with what? Velrus shot back. Our military is scattered. Our economy is broken. Our people are starving. Even if we could reach human space, which we cannot, we would lose any conflict within days. Then what do you suggest? That we just give up? I suggest we accept responsibility for our own failures, Velrus said quietly. We did this to ourselves? We treated humanity like servants for 80 years. We dismissed their contributions. We denied them basic respect. They left because we gave them no reason to stay. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some agreed with Velrus. Others refused to accept any blame, insisting humanity had a moral obligation to help regardless of how they had been treated, while the Council tore itself apart. Intelligence reports were coming in about humanity's new territory. What they revealed was shocking. Humanity had not just survived their departure from Council space. They were thriving. The new sector they had claimed held dozens of habitable worlds. Advanced stations orbited every major planet. Their fleet was larger and more sophisticated than anyone had realized. And their technology, the technology they had carefully limited when working with the Council, was centuries ahead of what they had shared. The quantum shielding was just the beginning. Intelligence suggested humans had developed faster-than-light communication, advanced AI systems, and energy weapons that made Council military technology look primitive. They had been holding back the entire time they served on the Council, deliberately keeping their capabilities secret. They were testing us, Dr. Yunwoo Kim had said in an intercepted communication from 3 years ago. Seeing if the Council could be trusted with real partnership. They failed that test repeatedly. The recordings were devastating. They showed human leaders discussing Council politics with clear-eyed assessment. They saw through every condescending comment, every dismissive gesture, every broken promise, and they had prepared for eventual departure long before the final vote. We gave them 80 years to prove they valued us. Ambassador Ji-hoon Park had said in his final report to Earth before announcing the withdrawal. They proved the opposite. They will learn the difference between partnership and dependency. We owe them nothing. The recording spread through Council space, shared secretly among those who were beginning to understand the truth. Some were angry at the revelation. Others felt only shame. Velrus obtained a copy and listened to it alone in their office. Ji-hoon's voice was calm, measured, without anger or bitterness. He simply stated facts, documented every insult and broken promise, and explained the decision to leave. His final words echoed in Velrus's mind. We owe them nothing. He was right. Humanity owed the Council nothing. They had given 80 years of service in exchange for contempt and dismissal. The debt, if there was one, ran the other way. Resource conflicts were breaking out across Council space. Species were fighting over what remained of the human-built infrastructure. Some tried to salvage the abandoned facilities, hoping to make them work again. Most failed. The technology was too advanced, too integrated with systems they did not understand. Food riots continued. Medical crises multiplied. The void swarm advanced. And through it all, the Council fractured further. A group of younger counselors, species that had joined after humanity and remembered working alongside humans as colleagues rather than servants, formed a reform movement. They called themselves the New Partnership Coalition. Their goal was to completely restructure the Council, eliminating the hierarchy that had allowed some species to be treated as lesser members. If we survive this crisis, their leader declared, we must ensure it never happens again. Every species must have equal voice, equal respect, equal partnership. That is the only way forward. But survival seemed increasingly unlikely. The void swarm was accelerating. Projections suggested it would reach the core territories within 6 months. The defense fleet, what remained of it, could not stop it. Evacuation plans were being drawn up, though there was nowhere to evacuate to. Every nearby sector was either consumed by the swarm or too hostile to sustain the massive refugee population. Some species were building colony ships, planning to flee into deep space and hope they could find new homes. Others were preparing to make final stands on their homeworlds, preferring death to exile. And still, humanity remained silent. Valrus made a decision. They would go to human space personally, not as a counselor, not with any authority or power, but as a simple petitioner seeking mercy. They would cross the barrier alone, unarmed, and beg for help. Not for the council, which was beyond saving, but for the innocent people who were suffering. It was a desperate plan with almost no chance of success. But it was the only option left. Valrus prepared a small ship, just large enough for one person. They loaded it with records of the council's failures, documentation of every way humanity had been mistreated, and a simple message: you were right. We were wrong. Please help those who cannot help themselves. As the ship departed for human space, Valrus looked back at the council hub one last time. The lights were dim now, flickering as power systems failed. The once great station was dying, just like the civilization it represented. The old order was ending. What came next, Valrus did not know. But they had to try. 3 years after humanity's withdrawal, President Yoon Han stood before the Human Coalition Assembly. The chamber was filled with representatives from 47 colonies, each one a thriving world in humanity's new territory. The contrast with the old council chambers could not have been more stark. Here, every seat was equal. Every voice mattered. We have received another communication from former council space, Yoonji reported. The situation continues to deteriorate. The Void Swarm has consumed 30% of their territory. Refugee counts exceed 12 billion. 4 major species have collapsed entirely. The council itself has fractured into 7 competing factions, each claiming legitimate authority. The assembly listened in silence. There was no joy in humanity's success, not when it came at such a terrible cost to others, but there was also no regret about the decision to leave. What is our response? One representative asked. The same as before, Yoonji said. We maintain our defensive perimeter. We accept refugees who come as individuals seeking asylum. We reject any governmental delegation seeking to negotiate council authority in our space. Admiral Solman Lee, now commanding the entire human defense fleet, stood to give her report. Our barrier is holding. We have turned away 16 council military vessels attempting to enter our territory. We have processed over 2 million refugee applications. Approximately 400,000 have been approved and resettled on colony worlds. Only 400,000? Another representative questioned. Out of 2 million? Our screening process is strict, Solman explained. We accept individuals and families willing to leave their old allegiances behind. We reject anyone attempting to maintain council governmental authority. Anyone with military rank who refuses to resign that rank, and anyone who cannot demonstrate they will contribute positively to our society. It was harsh but necessary. Humanity had learned the lesson of the council. They would not recreate the same hierarchical system that had failed so catastrophically. Anyone entering human space had to accept human terms, equality, cooperation, and earned respect. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim presented the latest technology reports. Our quantum shielding has proven effective against the Void Swarm. We have deployed defensive platforms at our border. 3 swarm incursions have been repelled with minimal damage. The technology works, and the council still does not have it, someone noted. Correct. We have shared nothing with council space. The assembly debated for hours. Some argued for humanitarian intervention, for providing aid despite the past mistreatment. Others insisted humanity had no obligation to save those who had treated them as servants. Eventually, a compromise emerged. Humanity would provide limited humanitarian aid, but only through carefully controlled channels that bypassed council governmental authority, medical teams, would be sent to refugee camps but not to council-controlled facilities. Food shipments would go directly to civilian populations, not to governmental distribution centers. Technology would not be shared at all, to prevent it from being weaponized by the various factions fighting for power. It was help, but on humanity's terms. The days of serving council demands were over. Beyond the barrier, Councillor Velrus's small ship approached human space. It had taken weeks to reach this point, traveling through sectors that were once safe but now teemed with dangers. Pirates, refugees, and the advancing edge of the void swarm made every jump risky. The ship's sensors detected the barrier, a network of defensive platforms and patrol ships that formed an impenetrable wall around human territory. Velrus transmitted their identification and a simple message: I come alone, unarmed, seeking mercy. Not for governments, but for innocent people. For 3 days, there was no response. Velrus waited in the small ship, surviving on minimal rations, wondering if this desperate gambit would end in silence like all the others. Then a human patrol ship appeared. It was sleek and powerful, far more advanced than anything the Council had. A communication channel opened. Councillor Velrus, you are not authorized to enter human space. I understand, Velrus replied. I am not here as a counselor. I have no authority, no power, no governmental position. I am here as one person, asking for help on behalf of those who are suffering. The Council has sent many such requests. They have all been denied? I know, but I am not asking for help for the Council. The Council is finished. I am asking for help for the children dying in medical wards, for the families fleeing the void swarm, for people who had no voice in the decisions that created this disaster. There was a long pause. Then stand by. Your request is being forwarded. 2 more days passed. Velrus waited, not knowing if humanity would show the mercy the Council never had. Finally, a response came. Not a message, but an escort. 3 human ships appeared and guided Velrus's vessel through the barrier into human space. They traveled for 6 hours before reaching a small station. Orbiting a beautiful blue world. President Yoon Ji-han was waiting. The meeting took place in a simple conference room. Nothing like the grand chambers of the old council. Velrus entered to find Yoonji sitting at a plain table, no throne, no elevated platform, just 2 chairs facing each other. Please sit, Yoonji said. Velrus sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Velrus did something that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. They knelt, lowering their head in a gesture of complete submission. Please, Velrus said. I am not here for the Council. I am not here for governments or politics. I am here for the innocent people who are dying. The children. The families. Those who had no power to change what happened. Junji gestured for Velrus to sit again. I know why you are here, and I have read your message. You acknowledged our mistreatment. You accepted responsibility? That is more than any council representative has done before. It is the truth. We were wrong. We treated your people as tools to be used. We dismissed your contributions. We denied you basic respect and dignity. When you left, we learned what you had truly been providing. And we learned it too late. Yes, you did, Yoonji said simply. But your understanding does not obligate us to return. We left because we chose freedom over servitude. That choice stands. I am not asking you to return. I am asking for help. Not for governments. For people. For those who are suffering through no fault of their own. Yoonji leaned back in her chair. Humanity is already providing aid. Medical teams in refugee camps. Food shipments to civilian populations. We are helping, but on our terms. The void swarm is accelerating. Without your quantum shielding technology, billions more will die. I'm begging you to share it. Share it with whom? The council is fractured. There are 7 factions claiming authority. Which one do we give advanced military technology to? What happens when they use it against each other instead of against the swarm? Velrus had no answer. Yoonji was right. The council could not be trusted with such power, not in its current state. Then what can be done? Velrus asked quietly. Yunji stood and walked to the window. Outside, the blue world turned slowly, peaceful and beautiful. We will deploy our own defensive platforms in strategic locations. We will create safe zones where refugees can gather, protected by our shields. We will send evacuation ships to extract civilians from danger zones. But we will not hand over our technology, and we will not submit to council authority. What about full membership? Partnership? We will give you everything you asked for. The council you are offering to give us membership in no longer exists. It is broken, divided, dying. We have no interest in joining that chaos. Yunji turned back to face Velrus. However, we are willing to form partnerships with individual species. If your people wish to join human space, to live under our laws and accept our terms, you are welcome. Leave your titles at the door. Leave your old hierarchies behind. Come as equals or do not come at all. Velrus understood. Humanity was not offering to save the council. They were offering to build something new. On foundations of genuine equality and respect, over the following months, humanity's aid efforts expanded. Defensive platforms with quantum shielding were deployed in 12 locations. Creating safe zones that held back the void swarm, human evacuation ships pulled millions of civilians from doomed worlds. Medical stations were established in neutral space, staffed by human doctors who asked no questions about where patients came from, but it all happened outside council authority. Species that wanted protection had to accept human terms, no governmental control over the safe zones. No military forces allowed, complete equality for all residents, some species accepted. They abandoned the old council, renounced their claims to authority, and joined human space as equal partners. They brought their knowledge, their skills, and their cultures. Humanity welcomed them. Others refused, clinging to the old hierarchies even as their worlds burned. They demanded humanity serve them, provide protection while allowing them to maintain their power structures. Humanity declined and let them face the consequences of their choices. The old council held one final session. Only 15 members attended. They sat in the darkened chamber, surrounded by broken systems and fading lights, and formally dissolved the Galactic Council. It was over. From the ruins, something new began to emerge. The human coalition expanded, accepting species that came as partners rather than superiors or servants. They built a new government based on earned respect, where no species held inherent authority over others. Some of the old council members joined. Velrus was among them, renouncing their title and position, coming simply as a refugee seeking a better future. They worked in a human medical facility now, learning to operate the equipment that had once seemed too advanced to understand. It was humbling work, but honest. 5 years after the withdrawal, humanity had created something the old council never achieved. A truly cooperative multi-species civilization. Based on mutual respect and equality, the Void Swarm was eventually stopped at the line of human defensive platforms. It could not penetrate the quantum shields. The swarm moved on, seeking easier prey, leaving human space and its protected zones untouched, but life continued. New colonies were founded. New partnerships were formed. And in the schools where human and alien children learned together, teachers told the story of the withdrawal. Not as a tale of revenge or triumph, but as a lesson about dignity, self-respect, and the courage to walk away from those who did not value you. President Yunji Han, now retired, sat with her grandchildren and told them the truth. We never hated them. We simply refused to be used. And when we left, we showed them what real partnership looks like. Some learned. Some did not. That was their choice to make. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had not taken revenge on those who mistreated them. They had simply chosen their own path, built something better, and welcomed those who truly wanted to join them as equals. It was enough.